You are watching the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
I don't know. Do you wear glasses?
Hello.
I do.
Welcome again.
Hey,
This is our Friday gig, our Friday live stream. And joining us this week is Brian Wecht. Brian, I'm looking down because that's where you are on my screen.
Hey.
Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me on. I've been watching you occasionally. Saw a bunch of last week, and I'm thrilled to be here.
You're sporting a new pandemic haircut, I see.
The pandu.
Yeah, I woke up about a week ago, and it felt so greasy and awful, and I was like, just take it all.
Take it all off.
My 6-year-old was especially excited to get in there with the clipper. I had these beard stubble clippers, and she and my wife just helped me take it all off. Yeah.
So, but Brian, did you go to that length that you're at now, or did you go to skin?
I went to. This was about a week ago, so it was like a quarter. The setting on the clipper was like a quarter inch.
Because you know what I have this funny thing. Like, didn't you guys see the TV show The Boys?
Yeah,
sure, man.
Yes. Yeah, I just watched it. Yeah.
When's that coming back out?
Wait, hold on.
Soon.
Don't derail me because I was going for something here. And I think it was also in Full Metal Jacket where they have a scene where someone like shaves their head. I always wanted to shave my head kind
Joker.
Yeah, like just do it kind of crazy, and pretend like you're going because the Deep in the TV show The Boys shaves his head. Remember, he kind of loses it.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I thought
think about in Police Academy where they go and get haircuts.
Yeah, that's right.
Two guys are like, just take it off, and the other guy goes, just a little trim around the sides. It's not the army.
Brian, did you get struck with how oddly shaped your head is? Because everyone thinks their head has a weird shape.
Quite the opposite in my case, because I was expecting it to be weird shaped, and I was like, dude, this is like nice and round. I thought it was going to be real weird, but I commented to my wife Rachel. I was like, I'm actually pretty impressed with the regularity of my head shape.
Yeah.
Do you notice? Did you
your
notice that you're a lot more gray than you thought?
No, I thought it was pretty gray.
Oh, because that usually happens when you shave down, because you see everything that's coming in.
Roots.
Yeah.
The truth.
The truth.
You get to the truth.
The other thing is, I saw, you look down on the ground and all that hair is just all over the place, and you're like, there's that much gray, because of course, there's a lot in the back you can't normally see, and so there's these giant tufts of gray laying on the ground.
Somebody said, how much would it take for in a charity for me to shave my head? And the answer to that is It would be a lot, and the money would have to go to me since I'm the one that would be suffering. Charity, nothing. No, I would shave my head for charity. I actually, when someone that we know got breast cancer, I offered to shave my head with them just so they weren't bald alone. And I was all ready to do it, and they were like, "No, don't do it." I was like kind of going back and forth a little bit, but I mean, I'd shave my head for money. Sure.
It feels great. It's so it's so much cooler when I get real hot when I sleep, and so just that like not having this massive hair on top of my head, it feels awesome.
It must be so.
I know the feeling.
It's so easy,
super easy.
I want to shave my head, but
you walk out of the shower and your hair is dry in like 2 minutes.
Like you just kind of go like that, and the water shoots out of your hair.
Kara, that's what wigs are for. Just do it and then wear a wig for a while, grow it back.
They wouldn't know. Would you do you use shampoo? I'm very interested in this, or do you just use like bar soap?
No, I've been using shampoo, just like a little tiny bit of shampoo to.
Do you use conditioner?
Like I think one shower I did.
Now, Brian, you're naked when you're showering, right? You're fully nude.
I like to mix it up. I mean, sometimes.
You know, Brian's a never nude.
Sometimes the ninja outfit.
Somebody just said that they saw the shape of the skull in a medical image, and it made me realize that you can imagine if you can get a medical image of your skull, like high res, and then have a 3D prop made that this is your skull.
I'd love that.
You'd be all over that.
That'd be
oh my
cool.
gosh, forget it.
Hold it in your hand, put it in your collection.
3D printed out.
I like this idea.
All right, let's talk about what cool things happened to us over the last week, and I'll start.
Okay.
Ian, show the first picture. If you can, please. So I was on like a very serious phone call the other day, and I noticed something in my backyard. So first, I just want to see, do you see anything or notice anything in that picture?
Oh, I like how Ian chooses me to block out.
It normally blocks me.
Right? Kara's turned into a patch of grass.
Sorry, Kara.
How do I see this picture?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. Bob.
I sent
you have
that
to
link.
open up Mixer.
I'll send it.
Kara, I can see you.
Mixer.
Yeah, he sent you a link so you could see the stream. So
all I see, Steve, is a place where the grass isn't growing. Maybe a rock. I see a big rock.
Yeah. Okay. Good eyes. So I notice in my backyard, like nestling underneath my apple tree, a turkey. Yeah. Which is not a big deal. We get turkeys in Connecticut all the time. They're wandering through my backyard. Usually, because we keep a wolf in our yard, my dog, Sagan. And so he usually keeps the critters away. But he was indoors, and this turkey was just sitting there. So after like 10 minutes or so, I start to realize, I've actually never seen a turkey like not walking through my yard. This thing is just sitting in one place.
Yep.
Never seen that before. And he was there for like 20 minutes. And then he wandered off, into the taller grass.
Wow.
So, and that picture you're looking at is like literally right at the edge of my backyard where it's transitioning to the woods, basically.
But why is that picture significant? Because I don't really
why
see
do we have a
anything
picture?
to look at.
Why is this not my face?
All right, so go to the second picture. Go to the second picture, Ian. So let me zoom in a little bit. Now do you see anything?
I see the exact same picture.
Baby turkeys.
Whoa. Well, yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be a fair assumption to make?
Oh, cool. Very well camouflaged.
There you go. Thank you, Ian. So, they're very well camouflaged. So my wife and I was telling her about the turkey. I'm like, maybe that turkey's like nesting back there. So we walk back, and we were like almost on top of those chicks before we noticed them. The mother was not visible. And those, they were so adorable. They start peeping, the little turkey chicks. And then the mama turkey comes out of the tall grass. Totally didn't see her. I mean, their camouflage is unbelievable. And she makes a run at us,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because we were getting a little bit too close to the chicks. So
Steve, you're saying that you like hot chicks in your backyard?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And wild turkey.
So how did this confrontation end? What did you do? You just
that was
walked
it.
away?
We backed off and walked away. But we were worried that like they were going to be there, like that was the nest, like she decided to nest, because then I couldn't let my dog out,
Yes, that's right.
But then we went back later that evening and they were gone. So I'm assuming they were just feeding or resting or whatever. So they weren't there permanently, which is good.
Steve, that reminds me. Years ago, I was mowing my lawn with a push mower, and parts of the lawn were kind of tall. And I started mowing, and I saw movement. So I stopped and looked, and they were the cutest bunnies, little baby bunnies in the grass that I almost eviscerated.
Yeah, right.
Can you imagine if I just went like a foot further? There would have been like blood and fur everywhere. It would have been horrible. It was very lucky, and I just, of course,
poor bunnies.
I was like, wow, that was a close call. That would have ruined my day.
I have a question.
Hey Jay, did you? Sorry, Evan. Jay, did you notice that you logged in under Courtney's name to Zoom?
No, you can change that name to anything you want. I could change mine to Kara.
Courtney uses
there. Now it says Jay.
Yeah, Courtney uses Zoom for work. So I always forget to change it back, because she'll change it when she wants people to know what her name is. Yeah, and that's why what's funny is every time we sit down to do this, I've been trying to remember to type in something other than my name.
And you just wrote Jay.
Yeah, but because you were talking, I had to do something. I couldn't have
Okay, Evan, sorry about that.
Is there an evolutionary advantage to young things being cute in the eyes of other animals?
Sure.
In the eyes of their parents.
I'll feed it. It's cute. I'll give it food.
Well, yeah. I mean, is it a way to help protect the young from being consumed? But I mean, does a dog look at a young thing the same way a human does? Does it?
No.
Those parts of the brain firing in the same?
Well, so mammalian cuteness is pretty universal to all mammals.
It's mathematical. You can look at the ratio, the size of the
Yeah,
eyes.
but a lot of mammals eat other babies.
Yeah, but if you're a predator, you probably see yum. Yeah, when you see
delicious.
You don't give a fuck about cute.
No, but if you're the parents of that baby, of course, that's what drives you to want to take care of them, is their cuteness.
I learned today, this is from Audrey's kindergarten, had like a possum expert on, and who's really just the grandfather of one of the kindergartners who works at a wildlife sanctuary. And he was saying
also
that,
a possum expert.
Yes, also, that's right.
Yes.
He was saying that when a mother possum will sometimes walk with like 13 kids or whatever on her back, and if one falls off, she'll just leave it.
Yes.
Just keep going.
Yeah. I had to rescue one a couple of years in my backyard. That's exactly what happened.
You're right.
Yeah,
one fell off a mother,
also,
and it was dying.
It depends on the reproduction strategy. Do they put a lot of effort into a few, offspring, or do they just make as many as they can, hoping that some will survive? Like bunnies.
Quantity.
Bunnies die constantly.
Quality.
For that reason. Yeah.
They're not going to risk the full brood for just one. It's acceptable.
And
losses.
mice too. I had a mouse. It was a lab mouse that didn't get used, and I kept it at home after they said I could have it. And she gave birth because our lab mice were pregnant. And that's why, because she gave birth too early, basically. And I had her in this little mouse cage. It was actually a hamster cage that had an observation deck on top, so that they would crawl up the little tube and then they could go up to the top. Yeah. And she selected which babies were going to live and which ones were going to die.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she gave birth, and then she put some in a different part of the cage. And I was freaked out by it. And I was like, no, feed them too. So I would bring them and put them back. And then she was like, F that. She knew exactly which ones they were. They were marked, and she put them right back.
Why? Was there something wrong with them?
No, she just didn't have enough resources for all of them. So she stopped feeding like 3 of them.
But she had clearly picked some over others.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that they were like the runts. They were probably smaller, weaker. But there's nothing obviously wrong with them to my eyes, but she obviously could see something that I couldn't see.
I'm so glad my mom didn't do that.
Exactly.
I would have been the runt.
Bob, she might have, and we just don't know about
it. Ooh.
We were triplets. Oh shit.
It's family secret.
Ian, can you cue my pictures? We'll get this over with.
I apologize, Kara.
Oh, that's fine. You could put it over everybody, by the way.
Yeah, I don't care.
You did with the other one.
Yeah, you could make it big.
Yeah, okay, fine. I love you, Ian.
I love you, Ian. That's cute.
Now Kara's in there.
I'm still here. Kidding. Sorry.
Hey, you're the only face we can see now.
All right,
So,
so
Jay,
what
why are
you're
we looking at this pile of dirt?
Yeah, this. Okay, so you see,
As opposed to Steve's grass.
Yeah.
Pile of grass.
you can
Yeah,
see
this-
there's a
this-
line there, right? It goes from dark brown to light
Yes.
brown, lighter
Yes.
brown.
Right.
That actually is a trench where I'm putting. That's where the stone wall is going to go. So I've learned so much in the last month about building stone walls. This is going to be a very mild retaining wall because these are wood chips that you're actually seeing, on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
So I'm putting a wall there so I can make the wood chips get higher and level it off, because you can't really see it in this picture. In the other picture, you can see it, that there's much more of a slope that's going down here. So I'm building a stone wall for the first time. I went out, I bought all the tools that I need. I got tons of cement. I think
Do you want the next slide?
Yeah, go ahead.
Next slide.
Is it S-type cement? I think I got mortar, actually.
What happened?
That might be too
Right.
opaque. Okay, hold on.
Oh, it's opaque.
Transparent. Hold on.
Transparent.
But the
Trying to
bottom
make
line
it,
is,
there we go.
wow, I can't really even see that. What happened?
Here it comes. It's called the 10-second fade. It's a feature, not a bug.
So the bottom line is that, there you go. Now you can see the trench, right? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna dig it a little deeper. I'm gonna start. So I have to put down crushed stone first. It's a packing material. So I bought a tamper, so I got to tamp it down, and then I got to level the hell out of it. And then I put a little bit of mortar down, and I run the first line of stones, and then I got to build it, and I got to know what I'm doing. So there's all these rules when you build a stone wall. You can't have you want to stagger the vertical lines, right? You don't want to put the stones like bricks. You know how they stagger bricks? You got to stagger the stones as well.
Yeah.
And they have to kind of be fading back a little bit because the retaining wall is going to get pushed by the hydrostatic pressure, which, look, again, this is not a tall, it's only going to be 3 feet tall, so I'm not even that worried about it. But I got to put crushed stone, or I got to put 3/4 stone behind the wall so the water has a place to go. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot of engineering that goes into a stone wall. And I'm just excited to start to make it because I've never done it.
Who knew, Jay, that stone walls were so complicated?
Yeah, they are. They're actually really complicated.
Who knew that? I don't know.
But I learned a lot about the differences between cement and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
Cement is very rigid. And there's different types of mortar, and they have varying degrees of flexibility. So if you get the kind of mortar that you use with a stone wall, especially in New England where the temperature changes like crazy, you want the cement to actually be able to flex a little bit. You want the wall to be able to move with the freezing of the ground. So you get this certain type of cement for the application, and it turns out that S-type cement is the kind I needed.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most boring last sentence.
If I died right now, it would be a sad life. And Jay was talking about mortar when he
versus cement.
What is S-type cement? What does that mean?
No, don't ask.
They're
I really want to know, actually.
I think. First off, I'm buying pre-mixed mortar, which means that it already comes mixed with the Portland, the actual cement, the part of it that is an adhesive. You know what I mean? The part that kind of hardens, but it's cut with sand. And
is that what the S stands for?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think that the letters that they designate have to do with how rigid it will become. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting one that is kind of in the middle. It's not super rigid and it's not super flexible. It has to kind of have both properties.
So it's just super.
Yeah, it's super. I could be wrong. It might not be S. I'm trying to remember.
So we're doubling down on this whole cement conversation.
Yes. Apparently we are, and it's all Brian's fault. I don't even blame Jay anymore.
No, my goal is to get 0 viewers.
Did last week I shared some of my newest arts and crafts. Did I share my Mr. Rogers paint by numbers?
No.
I saw you posted
No.
I posted it, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is one of my new things that I completed this week. And then my other is that I learned how to punch needle.
Mm-hmm.
Which I
haven't decided what to do with it yet, but
you could throw it away.
I could just throw it away. That's true. But I'm probably, I don't know, I might make a trivet out of it or a pillow or something.
Awesome.
But it's I don't know if you
Trivet?
can see up close. Yes, a trivet.
Something you put hot stuff on?
This is so funny because I had this conversation with a big group of friends before the pandemic, and there was a bunch of us together. We were camping, and none of the guys knew what a trivet was, but all of the women knew what a trivet was. And
I just used the word trivet in conversation like 2 days ago.
I love that. I wasn't sure if it was regional or if they just.
No, you're right. It's a total guy-girl thing. Totally.
Well, what is a trivet?
Well, what does that mean that I've
something you
known
put
it
hot
most of
food
my
on.
life?
It's something you put hot food on.
Okay.
Yeah, like
so it doesn't burn your
pork,
table
it
or
can
your
be
tablecloth
metal.
or something.
Yeah. And so I might turn this into that. But basically, you use a really big gauge needle that the yarn goes all the way through and it loops a few different ways. And then you punch in and out at like really regular intervals and it loops the yarn.
Yes.
And so it's almost like a rug, actually. That's what it feels like. It's
I
really
made one
thick.
of those when I was like 14.
They had latch hooking too.
It was latch hooking. It was a latch
Yeah,
hooking.
latch hooking is similar. But this on the backside, you
time.
can see it's also looped. I
Yeah,
glued
yeah.
it so that nothing comes
So,
out.
Kara, you could theoretically knit me a shag carpet.
You just wanted to say knitting.
You can't knit a shag carpet. But
I
yes,
don't know.
you can latch hook a shag carpet.
Latch hook it.
You shag a knit
So
carpet?
can you make?
Yeah.
So that's what do you call that? Punch what? What's that called?
Punch needling.
You can punch needle a throw rug. How about that?
You can knit a throw rug.
You could knit a throw rug and punch.
Throw then.
Well, no,
punch.
wait, sorry. You could knit a throw blanket. You could punch needle a throw rug. Yeah, you could.
Okay.
But if you wanted it to be shaggy, it would be latch hook, which is what Steve mentioned.
And I thought the concrete talk was better.
All right, let's talk about something a little bit more interesting.
Balance here.
How many
Mother
people
effers.
died this week, Steve?
Oh God.
Oh God.
Well, you know, we broke 100,000 in the United States. We're almost at 6 million worldwide cases, 350 something deaths worldwide. So big milestone in the U.S. But it's the pandemic is chugging along.
Yeah.
The big conversation now is like, how do we reopen, society, the economy? Now, obviously, we are doing it. It's happening.
Yep.
It's how do we do it, and how do we keep from creating a second wave?
How do we stop people from being people?
I just saw an LA Times post that said as early as today, certain salons and restaurants can open.
I saw that too.
I was like,
in LA.
Yeah, like what? That was a weird jump. So I'm not really sure. Maybe there's really strict guidelines for how they're supposed to do it. That's why it said only certain ones. But
I like what Cuomo said today. Cuomo today said the economy is not going to bounce back like a basketball. It's going to bounce back like a football. We don't know what direction it's going to bounce.
Yeah.
It's kind of unpredictable. Never really been done before. So that kind of is a good.
Well, and it's totally unclear what, if anything, is going to be enforced anyway, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like even with these reopenings, they might have the rules, but it's not clear to me that restaurants or salons are going to follow them, and if they don't, what the penalty is.
But the president can say restaurants. Do you guys understand restaurants if retail shops are still requiring that you wear a mask?
Yeah.
I was wondering that. No, I don't understand that. Yeah.
They need to have extreme social distancing, like a few tables,
Yeah, that probably is going to be the
listen,
case.
if I think the wise thing in this early stage, instead of rolling the dice with your family's health, you want to go to a restaurant, just order the food out. The restaurant will still benefit. I want to support. My wife and I have been trying to support the local restaurants that we love around here.
Yeah, we've been doing that too.
Yeah.
The first few weeks it was like, no, don't get anything from outside the house. Now it's like, I'll go. The restaurants have figured it out. They know how to.
Yeah.
Most of them have like that table that you walk up to and nobody's within 6 feet. That's all good.
And they're also incredibly motivated not to screw up and get one person sick, because they get one person sick, that goes in the news. I'm not going to McDonald's anymore, wherever, because somebody got sick. So their motivation should be incredibly strong for them.
And the thing is, at least in Los Angeles, the weather is really, really nice. So right now, it's not one of these situations where it's freezing outside and people need to dine in order to escape the cold, or they need to dine in for the air conditioning. Because some people don't have the luxury of being able to take that food back home or take that food someplace comfortable. But you could get a bag of to-go food and sit outside and eat it right now, completely comfortably. Yeah. So I just don't. It's incalculable to me.
Do you understand what the liability side of this is? Like if a restaurant
I don't think anybody knows. It's probably local. Those are probably
I would imagine
locally different. Yeah.
So that's
when you say liability, like I'm going to sue you if I think I caught COVID at your restaurant.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
So That's being kind of worked out. My understanding is that lawmakers, both local and perhaps federal, are going to enact laws in which are going to limit any lawsuits against people.
Right?
There's going to have to be caps on this kind of stuff. To some degree, it's being discussed, is my understanding, and it's all over the place.
But it seems like it would be, in most cases, almost impossible to prove definitively, even within a reasonable doubt, that you caught it from that one place, right?
I don't think you honestly can. I don't think our tests have the time specificity. Yeah. Like, there's just no way to know. If you're sick for 20 days, it's impossible to know exactly the point of infection.
Yeah. Although I guess with extreme contact tracing, that could change that.
Right.
Yeah, but we're not there yet. Yeah.
If a lot of people got sick and the only thing in common was that restaurant, that would be good.
Which is what they do, like with food poisoning. That's how you figure it out. Yeah.
But the thing is, food poisoning, like when we talk about, let's say it's salmonella or E. coli or norovirus, it's not just in the population, in the numbers that COVID is right now. So it's true that, with extreme contact tracing, you'd know, but it's because it's aberrant when there's a local salmonella outbreak or a local E. coli outbreak. You can trace it back to the food, but so many people are getting sick with COVID everywhere right now. Yep. It would be that much harder.
So I'm curious, guys, what do you think about the whole responsibility of social media? Like, the whole Trump thing that happened this week where
I like it because it's like hilarious. Oh, you mean like what Twitter did to Trump or what Trump's trying to do to Twitter?
Yeah, no, I'm not even to get into the political aspect of it, but because I've been just thinking about the idea, like Trump is upset because he feels that conservative voices are being squelched on social media. But what social media outlets are claiming are that they're just fact checking, and it just so happens that conservatives are taking offense to their post being blocked. Now, I don't want to
beyond that, Jay, the most recent example, which was early this morning, was actually about inciting violence. And that was the really, I think, important thing that Twitter did when he said, when the riots start, the shooting starts, which is harkens back to like a 1960s, anti-black.
So George Wallace.
This incites violence. Like, we know that when Trump dog whistles in that way, people take action. They lone wolf. And so in that respect, I think it's actually really an important thing for them to do, because we've got to remember, like, these First Amendment issues, we've talked about this a million times on the show. These First Amendment issues refer to public space, right? Like, you sign a terms and conditions when you sign on to Twitter. Like, you're not I don't think there's any expectation that saying something on Twitter is the exact same as saying something outside on a street corner on public property,
of course,
or saying something in a government building. And we have to remember
in any case, he wasn't censored. They put by the way, this is not true. Here's a link to some actual facts. But
there is a little thing that says this violates our policies, and you have to click through it to read it.
That's the difference with today's, sure.
Oh, that's the new one. That's the violence one, though.
Yeah.
So they don't show it until you click through.
It's sort of like on Instagram. Like, I follow this pathologist, Mrs. Anjemi, who I love. She's like fascinating, and her pictures are gory as hell. So a lot of them have a thing on them that say, like, guys, this is graphic and gross. Sure. Are you sure you want to look at it?
But
and
my
then you
question,
click through.
my question,
Kara, what's that account, Kara?
Mrs. Angemi, Angemi. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
All right. So the question, though, is the thing that I find very provocative is, what should social media's responsibility actually be? And this is a very difficult and complicated question, because it's first, there has to be a will for them to want to do something about misinformation. Number two, we have to, how do you agree on what's true and what's not true, right? Because, like, I don't know, like, when we're kind of weird, we're skeptics and we want things to be verifiable and proven. I could care less what the truth actually is. I want to be following and acting on the truth, as close to the truth as I can get. So that's another issue, because there is alternate truth and alternate facts out there. And the third issue is, at what point would we, or should we be telling social media outlets, you now formally have a responsibility to block this type of information, whatever those identified things are?
Well, I think it depends on how we view them. Are they aggregators? Are they news streams? I mean, it always goes back to these same questions, right? Like, what is a social media platform ultimately? Is it supposed to be curated?
Right.
If it's supposed to be an aggregator and it's curated and there's actually a person or an organization
And
in
it's
charge,
a news outlet.
yeah, then they have every right to do that.
Yeah.
To label it. And that's, that is their, I mean, I don't know if I want to say it's their responsibility.
Or is it a public utility?
Exactly. Yeah. So it just depends on how it's being labeled by the government. And ultimately, I think that's up to regulators.
Well, I get, that's really not an answer, though. I mean, what I'm saying is, we're looking at Facebook and Twitter as the big examples here, right? These are the, like the two big social media outlets that really have like the world on these platforms. Donald Trump is using Twitter as his way to communicate to America. So that is it's a very important question, because this is going to define, one, how social media is going to function and what responsibility it has, and two, the thing I find to be really interesting, though, is this idea of what is the truth, right? Because I don't care what side of the fence or along the spectrum of politics you fall on, you have someone that you identify as the people who are full of shit, right? It doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum. You have identified some group, or maybe even more than one group, as full of shit, which isn't where you are. And that's the troubling part to me, because when I'm talking to people on Facebook and reading posts on Facebook, and I'm exercising the lessons that Steve has drilled into my head for the last 20 years. Be charitable. Try to give them the benefit of the doubt. People their hearts are not filled with malfeasance, that they actually think they're the good guys, just like everybody else. Right?
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not like the courts haven't wrangled with this previously. Yeah. Like, so we could say certain guidelines, like you don't address opinions. Anything that is reasonably considered an opinion, you leave it completely alone. You're allowed to have whatever crazy opinion you want to express.
And it's only in extreme cases where you're actively inciting violence, and you can link to that. You can show that you've
inciting immediate violence is sort of one of the standards in the U.S.
Yeah.
But it has to be a specific, immediate inciting. But the other thing is, but factual claims are different than opinions, and the courts do distinguish between a claim of fact and an opinion. And so that standard already exists. And the claim of fact doesn't have to be just wrong. That's not enough to trigger any kind of reaction. It needs to be, like depraved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There needs to be harm. So these standards can be applied. So you could say, for example, we will regulate harmful healthcare misinformation. Right. We will regulate fraudulent commercial claims. Right. There are certain standards that you could apply to social media that's perfectly reasonable, and as long as
it's all got precedence anyway.
Yeah, there's already precedence for it. Exactly. So we're just applying it to social media.
Right. But in this context, though, Steve, the problem that I'm seeing is that what Trump was saying was that conservative voices are being squelched online.
Yeah.
And what Twitter is coming back and saying is we are representing the facts. Like, he made a comment about what was Trump's original comment about the voting, mail-in voting. Now I've been reading as an example for so I'm trying to educate myself. I want to know the history of mail-in voting. I want to know what the pre-existing statistics were before Trump got elected. I want to know who has voted, right? So I'm trying to fill my head. Then you go online and you read, there's all these other news articles that people have online that are coming from all these other sources that I don't go to, that are saying the exact opposite of what I'm saying. Now, to be a legitimate skeptic and critical thinker, I don't want to just dismiss the contradictory information that I find to be wrong intuitively, right? I'm like, no, that's got to be wrong because it's not what I think. But then I read it and it's crap.
Yeah, that's why you have to go to good sources.
Yeah, but the point is, though, it's a huge amount of fact checking that social media has to do, and they have to do it fast.
Yeah, that's I think the real it's a volume problem.
It's like YouTube.
More
It's
than
like,
anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think,
Brian, you know that like on YouTube, there's an entire department that's dedicated to copyright infringement. And a big part of how people make their money on YouTube is actually just going after other people who have used their content illegally.
That's right.
But that they'd have to build the infrastructure for this.
Well, and the other thing is copyright infringement, at least spotting it is, I think, vastly easier to do algorithmically.
Yeah, you're right.
Than any kind of fact checking. So with YouTube, like we know this, we on our Ninja Sex Party channel, we do cover songs, right? And it is crazy. Like we're doing our own versions of these songs and we upload them. And, as soon as it's uploaded, copyright claim.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly.
So you think
how
it's a
that
bot
is.
that's doing it?
It's obviously a bot because this is before it's been put out to the public. Like we upload it and then release it days later. So it's clearly a bot doing it. I don't know, if it's just a title, if they're doing some kind of like
sampling,
but Brian, it's
sampling
a cover?
And trying to figure out the words and stuff.
Yeah.
So your covers are getting nailed?
Well, it's not nailed. So there's copyright strikes and copyright claims, right?
Yeah.
So with copyright claims, someone just says, "Hey, that's my thing," and then some of the money for it gets rerouted to them. And also with video, like there's audio and video. I could talk about this forever, but with audio, if you pay a standard rate, you can cover anyone's song and they can't say no. Basically, with video, no one has to let you do a video version of that song. So you could put it on your album and then pay them. It's 9.1 cents for a track that's under 5 minutes. But you cannot, there's no legal precedent for, anyone can make a video for this. So like there are all sorts of, the copyright claim is automated, but the strike is not. I think that's a separate.
And that's the thing, like maybe you can't automate a truth claim. I don't even really like talking about the idea of truth and like it's very 1984, but I think a blatant what do you want to call it in this case, because it's not going to be libel, it's not going to be, or maybe it would be a libel claim depending on what the claims are, but the good news is that the more the following, right? The bigger the outlet. So whether you're talking about President Trump or you're talking about the Washington Post or you're talking about Fox News, the more eyes are on it, which means there's more crowdsourcing in terms of submitting claims or flagging things. Right. So it's going to be more likely to make it to the standards department, whatever it's called. But yeah, it's unfortunately a massive expense to do that. It's a huge public service that they'd be offering that costs a lot of money.
Well, but don't kid yourself. I mean, these are billion-dollar companies.
No, I know, but they're under no obligation to do this legally.
But I know right now. But Kara, the point, I think what's happening right now, Trump has set ablaze this concept of should they be doing it? If they are, like the parameters are now being brought into the front. We can actually talk about, like look at what Zuckerberg did, McFacebook over there. Like he said, I don't think that we should, blah blah blah, and next thing you know, like everybody is parroting him and making a joke out of him, which I think he deserved. They're saying that Zuckerberg died yesterday or whatever, and all these. But
this
false
has been going on with Zuckerberg since Myanmar, since like this has been years and years and years of people drawing suit and making claims that allowing for false information there has directly led to election fraud, has directly led to death and rioting in the streets. So I think it is an issue, obviously, when there are outcomes. The biggest problem right now, I think, Jay, if I were to directly answer you, is that we've never had a situation where we had an unethical, dial that back, in this respect, a president who didn't respect his seat the way that we have right now. So most presidents, whether we think that certain decisions they made were ethical or not, respected the position of the presidency. And there was some amount of interest in trying to tell the truth. Their version of the truth might have been slightly different, but Trump has no allegiance to truth. And that's really where this big problem happens, is when we have somebody in a strong position of power where there's almost like a gentleman's and gentlewoman's agreement. Up until literally now, there's been a certain expectation of the presidency that you just don't go there.
Sure.
And he's the first person to really test the boundaries and the limits of that.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where like any reasonable person is no longer even considering what comes out of his mouth truthful. Like, I can't even be, politically friendly about that anymore.
The sad thing is, though, it still has massive ramifications for the stock market. It still has massive
Sure it does. But
and what's this thing about the WHO? Do you guys think is this illegal? Can he do this?
Can he do what? With the WHO?
He wants to withdraw from. No, he wants to withdraw the U.S. from the WHO.
I think he can
as of
do
today.
it.
Oh my god!
I think he
but
can
this seems like
branch
the
is
thing
not
about
supposed to have this kind of power.
every executive order. Every executive order is, to me, is just like can he do that? And there's no clean answer. Across the board, right?
It's always tested in the courts. See in court.
Yeah,
is what it
exactly.
comes
Because again,
down
historically, people didn't really abuse that either. That's like
sure they did.
I mean, in specific examples, after they tried a political route
Executive
to
orders
it.
have been abused for decades.
Sure, but Evan, let's be clear. They've tried back channels first. They've tried political answers first. They've tried diplomatic answers first. I don't think there's a lot of good evidence to show that historically, when presidents didn't like something, they just jumped to an executive order. I think that's actually pretty rare.
It's been getting progressively worse. It's been getting progressively worse.
The number of executive orders has risen.
Yeah.
And it's true. Obama did it a lot too. He did it when he didn't have a majority.
And Congress is just as much to blame because they're letting it happen.
It's a dereliction of Congress is really
it's not only that, it's deliberate because it's actually politically for them, it's cover. Like they don't have to do it. Just let the
they're a bunch of wimps.
And so they've been ceding power to the executive branch progressively.
You'll all become cynics one day like me. You'll get
you're
on your way.
Well,
to bring it back, though,
you're on your way.
To bring this back to the beginning, though, I think that because of the reach of social media, and I don't just mean Facebook's got 4 billion people on their platform. I mean the psychological reach. Social media for a lot of people is like. It's a very intimate thing, and it's very easy to feed people information via social media. I think that they have a responsibility. I absolutely think they have a responsibility. And I think that it has to be one of their, best funded departments in these companies is to be able to regulate the quality of the information that are on their networks. I mean, if we leave it the way that it is, where nothing is regulated and there is no fact checking, then I think we're asking people to abuse those systems.
So it's a new world, and we need to proceed carefully, and we need to really think about the effect that it's having on our society. And it's a problem we're not going to solve today on this show. No. I do want to move off, just so that we're bouncing around and not spending too much time on any one topic. Evan, can you end everybody's pain and tell us what's drawn on the whiteboard behind you?
Well, I was actually waiting for some people, but a couple of people actually did guess correctly. This is not the continent of Africa. This is also not Antarctica. Turned on its
Is it your stomach?
Any guesses from? It's a country. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Anyone want to guess what this?
That's a country.
That is a country with a few distinct little features. I hand drew this, by the way.
Proud of you.
Someone said it was misshapen, and I took great offense to that. I took careful considerations when hand drawing.
I give up. What is it?
Wait, no.
Don't wait for Kara.
I'm working on the Google machine.
Okay, you're trying to Google this?
When you Google country with loop on the bottom, for some reason, a bunch of bikini bottoms show up.
That's actually connected. It's like a tiny land bridge. What do they call that? A peninsula
isthmus.
Or isthmus. Thank you.
Country with tiny isthmus.
Lithuania.
On its border, but it's not on water. I don't know. Does that matter if it's on water or not?
It's landlocked.
That's what I thought.
No, there's an ocean here.
This must be my lucky day.
It's not Luxembourg, is it? Because nobody knows what that looks like. It's too small.
Here.
I'm guessing it's near India.
It is not near India.
It's not Germany, is it?
No, it's not Germany.
It is Lithuania. You're right,
Lithuania.
Steve. It's Lithuania. Yeah.
That's good because a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't know Lithuania if it bit them on the butt.
Yeah.
So.
Nope.
That's why John Oliver does that bit, where
Actually, you didn't even know.
You didn't even know this isn't this country we're talking about. All right, we got 1,000,003 emails about the 5G USB thing. We may do a deep dive on this on the show next week, but since
we need to. It's everybody.
But just very, very quickly. So in the UK, they have their trade standard, anti-fraud organization that are citing a company. This is what the company did. They took a
Here's
five.
mine.
Yeah, they took a 5 pound USB drive.
5
And-
pound? Oh, 5 pounds, like
$5,
dollars.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
5 British
I heard
Money,
that too,
baby,
Kara.
money.
I got confused about that.
I was
too.
I was
thinking
like-
the same thing, Kara.
currency.
five
The
stone.
currency pound.
5 gigs? What?
No.
You're supposed to say British. I think you're supposed to
They
say British.
they
pounds,
put a
but okay.
1 cent sticker on it, and they're selling it as a device that will protect you from the horrors of 5G.
Sure.
Yeah.
Here's mine.
Block the
Now,
5G
Brian, you tell me,
bad
fact
stuff.
check this for me. It works through quantum entanglement and frequencies or something like that.
Yeah, that check. Yep.
That sounds
checks.
kosher to you? Now, here's the worst part. The real kick in the ass is that it only is a 128 megabyte USB drive. Can you imagine?
What's
And they're
the
selling
cost?
it. They're selling it for like 395 pounds.
I didn't even know they made those anymore.
Yeah, these are all
Right?
the dead stock that they
Yeah,
killed.
it's dead stock.
They pulled it out of the back. They pulled it out of the warehouse.
I mean, you get
mean,
ripped
so
off for a USB drive, and it's only 128 megabytes.
Now wait, I
With
have
a
some
sticker on
questions.
it.
There's a certain
Steve,
brilliance to
Does it
You
have
to
a
admit.
piece of software,
No.
a file on it?
No.
Does it have a special chip?
No,
No, it has a hologram sticker. Is it a hologram sticker? They love
no,
those
it's just a
hologram
sticker.
stickers.
It's
Oh,
not
the
even.
regular sticker.
It's
just a
just
sticker.
the pretty little hologram.
It's just a freaking USB drive.
It's just a
That's
just
it.
a cheap old USB drive.
You want
These are
you want to see
geniuses.
one cheaper and older? I found this. This is like 20 years old.
What's on it?
64 meg. 64
What's on it,
meg.
Bob?
I had a 32
It's-
meg one, and damn it, I just saw it.
It's nothing interesting. But I remember
Four
when this came
songs.
out. When this came out, this was magic.
It was
Yeah.
probably
I was-
so expensive too.
I was going from 1.44 megabyte discs, and all of a sudden, here's a 64 meg drive, and to me, that was like, holy
Yeah.
crap! This is wonderful. This is like the best thing in the world. And now this is just like ridiculous. 64 meg. I mean, you can't even hold a picture.
But these people are scumbags.
What
That's an opinion,
Of course,
by the way.
of course.
Yeah.
These are total
These
scumbags.
things.
Because I mean, first of all, and then they get cited and they're like trying to push back. Well, you didn't even investigate the thing, and you don't know what you're talking about. Shut
Yeah, I don't
the
Give
need
me
to.
a
fuck up.
break.
It's a USB drive, and it's the
me a
gobbledygook.
Did they
total-
really say entanglement?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, they used all the woo.
Wow!
Let me pull
really?
it up. Let me pull it up, and I'll
Well,
Yeah.
and
like,
the real question is, how
it's an
did they
actual
not think
copy.
anybody with a brain could just blow the lid off of this immediately? Like
Yeah.
that's the thing. How did they?
But that's
think
not
they
who
were
they're
gonna get away
marketing
with
it to.
Yeah,
They're
they don't
marketing it to
care.
stupid people who
Yeah, but
think
they
that
know
5G
that
is
there's-
dangerous.
But they know there's a regulatory industry.
Mm-hmm.
They know somebody's gonna
Yeah.
buy this or look at it and go, "What? This is just a USB drive with a sticker."
So thanks to holographic nano-layer catalyzer, which can be worn or placed near to any
holographic.
smartphone or any other electrical radiation
Just
or
place
EMF
it.
emitting device. Through a process of quantum oscillation, the 5G BioShield USB key balances and reharmonizes the disturbing frequencies arising from the electric fog induced by devices such as laptops, cord phones, Wi-Fi
Wait, it's a
tablets, and
bio
such.
shield. What's the bio part?
5G BioShield.
Where's the bio?
They just needed to get every science in there.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. What Steve said, like, yeah, people like us, we don't even have to crack open the internet to
Yeah.
know that that's
It's like the
complete
turbo
BS.
and
No,
calculator.
because we've
Yeah.
seen we've seen it for 25 years now. We've been seeing.
What is
things
this
like
called?
All right,
again?
Brian, here's the
Technobabble.
entanglement. So
Yeah.
these same people previously marketed a supplement that will make you younger, right? The Clotho formula. And that uses proprietary procedure that leads to relativistic time dilation and biologic quantum entanglement at the DNA level.
I'll take 4.
Wow.
It's a self-parody.
How much do those cost?
Yeah,
Sitting on a
right.
gold mine track.
Relativistic
I almost-
time dilation. So you're traveling either at a relativistic speed. To
Bob, they're sending your DNA back in time to
Or-
when it was younger.
or no, well, not if you're invoking relativistic time dilation or a huge source of gravity. So it's
Do
one
you
of those
guys-
two things. What a breakthrough!
Do you remember? This was like 20 years ago that I remember this coming out. I don't know if they still make it as a de-aging cream or something. Someone was offering tachyon oil.
Tachyon oil.
No
Oh,
what is that?
way.
That's
They
awesome.
borrowed
So-
a Star
yeah,
Trek
Explain this to
term.
me.
Well, tachyons
okay.
are hypothetical particles that go back in time, which
Well,
don't.
So
This has never been
actually not
discovered.
totally
Never,
pulled
they're
that
not a
off
thing.
Star
well.
Trek.
So that's not actually what a tachyon really is to a physicist. Tachyon is a physicist with A tachyon is a particle with negative mass squared. Is the way we think about it.
Yeah.
And what that does is it indicates a vacuum instability. So when you have a universe or something which is producing tachyons, that's evidence that the vacuum is rolling off a peak into a new vacuum state.
Oh, please.
So
More
that
people
sounds
have a
like something
chance
you
of knowing
don't
this
want
is
on your face.
Lithuania than
But-
what the heck a tachyon.
Well, one way of thinking of this is that there are particles that travel faster than the speed of light,
Yeah.
and thus, by some
Else-
bullshit reason, backwards in time. But the idea that I remember this thing was they said this tachyon oil had been exposed, like placed in front of I believe their language was like a strong tachyon source, and was infused with its tachyon energy, so you could rub it on your face and get.
And
rid
is
of
there
wrinkles.
such a thing as a tachyon source?
No.
The
No.
tachyons are not real particle. Tachyon.
Right.
Yeah.
If
So
you see
you
a
never
tachyon,
discovered them.
That means we live in a stable vacuum, right?
Exactly.
Which is the universe.
I'm gonna start selling
if you start
neutrino
seeing
cream.
if you start seeing tachyons, that means get out
Yeah.
because the universe is
Right.
about to decay.
So there,
Get
so
out
there-
or seek help.
So there's a Nobel Prize. Here's a Nobel Prize in physics, evidence of tachyons, but I'm going to make a de-aging face cream. That's what I'm going to do with it.
And sell it on the internet.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we'll maybe talk about that a little bit more.
So Brian, did you have a chance to check out that thing we talked about last week?
I looked for you were talking about the entanglement thing. I couldn't find the source for what you were talking about. So
Bob, did you read about it? Bob, I read
what?
this article. So this, when I have really hard physics questions, I go to Bob first, and then if Bob can't answer it, or I think Bob can't answer it, I'll call Brian.
That's a reasonable progression.
Yes.
Yeah, sounds fine to me.
I read an article that talked about how they did a recent study where they had the most entangled particles that have ever been entangled in the same space at a hot temperature, which they thought would like be just a deal breaker all by itself. And they were saying that this is important for modern computing, for the next stage in computing, because they want to be able to track multiple entangled particles at the same time,
Right.
and that these devices produce heat. And what happened was, Brian, I do a lot of news searching in the morning for social media every day, right? Just looking for news items, and this came across. I popped up, I read a little bit, and I moved on, and I couldn't go back and find it. And then I happened to be on the phone with you, and I'm like, Brian, if you can find out about it, look it up for me. I guess you couldn't find it.
I looked at it a little bit. I mean, I would guess it sounds to me like they're talking about building, computers, and what a practical quantum computer would look like. That's my guess, but I couldn't find the article you were talking about.
I saw it. I think the bottom line was that they found a way to entangle lots of particles, more particles than have ever been entangled at once, even though it might have been a relatively kind of a hot environment, or an environment with a high temperature. And that's good because everyone says that entangled particles is very delicate and they can decohere very easily, and that if you can entangle a lot of computers, then you could create more powerful quantum computers. I mean, that was my quick take on just a quick skim.
Well, Brian, how would
that article?
I don't even understand. Like, Brian, do you have an understanding of how the entangled particles would be used in computing?
Oh, well, I mean, because quantum computing is all about qubits, right? Those are typically spin up, spin down type things. So if I don't know enough about quantum computing to say here's how they would use entanglement.
Yeah.
But certainly that idea of spins that you could know which way they're oriented would be important for that sort of thing. But no, I don't have a good specific knowledge of how they'd use it.
I find it fascinating. I mean, I guess the idea would be that the processing power would be immense, right? That's the whole point, I guess. But then, what about like sharing data across huge swaths, huge distances? Like, because you have like the ultimate encrypted data if these two particles are entangled with each other. That's the part I have.
Well, you have to delocalize. Like, if you're sharing it, that there's no way you're going to be able to do that realistically.
Okay.
You have to like transport some over there, and then you check the spin over there, and it's the opposite of what it is over there. Like that's I would imagine what they're talking about about is a local rather than a longer distance thing.
Okay,
I don't see
all
how
right.
realistically you could pull them apart and then,
Yeah, well,
do that.
Jay, my take on that was that when you use like quantum encryption, that if anybody taps in and eavesdrop, then that because it's quantum encryption, then it would be detected. So you could be extremely, extremely secure communications using that technology if they ever develop it. That's kind of like my understanding.
That sounds reasonable. The thing I did look into more, Jay, was, and for all I know, you guys are going to talk about this on the show that comes out tomorrow, the parallel universe thing.
Yeah,
we will
I
talk
talked about it. Yeah,
okay.
we will.
Well, let's talk a little bit about it now. I want to hear what Brian
Yeah, we
has
should
to
talk
say.
about it now, because in that universe, today is tomorrow. Is
Yeah.
what
Well,
tomorrow will
Bob,
be,
why don't
so
you tell
that
me
would
what
make sense.
you think, and I'll tell you why you're wrong.
I love it. The correction comes out before.
Bob quit.
And he's gone.
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
Now
can't
you're
hear
fuzzy.
you.
I'm fuzzy.
Oh, there he is.
I mean, it was a a nice sized bit on the show. We want to go into
Let's give them
details?
one liner, Bob. Come on.
Right, Steve?
Wasn't it? It's bullshit.
Yeah, they had some anomalous readings from this Anita test in the Antarctica. They detected what they thought was very high energy neutrinos that apparently went through the Earth, and because of that, they're positing that maybe it was neutrinos that didn't come from space, that came from space, but they were going backward in time. They didn't come through the Earth, but they came from space, but backward in time, and that's why it seemed to be coming through the Earth. And what they were doing was they were basically talking about the CPT symmetry theory about the universe, about cosmology, and how there's there could be a parallel universe that's like ours, but all the laws are different. It's dominated by antimatter. It's going backward in time. So they were basically referencing a very speculative theory to account for this anomaly of these neutrinos that seem to be going through the Earth that shouldn't be going through the Earth. But the thing is, they haven't even discounted instrument error or other things. Although it doesn't look like the standard model of particle physics can explain this, but they haven't ruled out experimental error. So that's the bottom line.
That's basically right. The idea is that they don't know what's causing this anomaly. In my physics career, like all the time, there are these like weird anomalies that come up. The one that is most like this was probably like 10 years ago. There were these faster than light neutrinos.
Opera, yep.
Yeah, opera, right. And then it's some systematic thing. So you almost all the time, one of two things happen is that the signal goes away with better data. You just have some fluctuation that then gets washed out as you get more data. And the other is that it's some systematic issue. Mm-hmm. Here, and anytime there's some anomaly, there's this ambulance chasing effect where every theoretical physicist, not every, but a lot of them fall all over themselves to come up with these outlandish theories about maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. In this particular case, the one particular explanation that someone wrote a paper on was based on this CPT symmetric universe, kind of a universe anti-universe pair by Neil Turok and collaborators. And it's by no means even the most plausible, whatever that means, exotic explanation. I'm sure there are a bunch of other things. The reason that the Turok thing I think was interesting is that it has these right-handed neutrinos, which make plausible dark matter candidates. And that's what was the genesis of this whole thing. Anyway, if you guys talk about it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating theory. I mean, it accounts for dark matter. And I love the symmetry of this universe anti-universe pair, like virtual particles, right? Particle antiparticle pairs that are created. It's fascinating.
Well,
I love the symmetry.
That's very different than virtual particles. The virtual particles are a totally different thing.
But I mean, but agreed. But the analogy goes as far as you've got a singularity that creates a universe anti-universe, and with virtual particles you have the vacuum of space creating a virtual particle antiparticle pairs, and of course they kind of just like annihilate each other, and they're not even real particles. But I mean,
they're not even real particles.
But there are some similarities where you've got a pair. One is the anti, the opposite of the other, and so, I mean that's as far as the analogy goes. But it was interesting. But you can't tie this observation to this very speculative theory that is nowhere near being accepted, by a lot of people yet.
The equivalent in astronomy is that every anomaly is an alien. Right. Anything that astronomers see out there, they don't know what it is immediately. It's aliens.
Oh,
And
great.
yes, Jason, I do look sleepy.
Yeah, right.
It's into the history. It would be an interesting paper or book or something to write about the history of these anomalies. And
The history
all
of
the
anomalies.
Yeah. I mean, anomalies are like a concept in quantum field theory in a specific way. That's not what these are. These are like, hey, there's some weird data. And one when I was in grad school was pentaquarks, which is a stable 5-quark bound state. That went away. That was, it turned out to be a baryon meson pair or something like that. But there are all these things. And every physicist that I went to, like the faculty members at UCSD when I was there, every time one of these popped up, they'd be like, don't get excited. It's more bullshit. It's going to go away. And
it does.
And it does. And the only thing that was exciting was the LHC, and then nothing happened there yet. But who knows?
Bosons?
Either. Yeah, but nothing new. Nothing weird. Nothing weird.
No, but that confirmed. That was good.
Kara, did you see the study about confirmation bias that I blogged about this week?
No, I'm going to read it.
Very quickly. Again, I don't know if this is going to make it to the top 5 for the week show next week, but either way. So they a study on confirmation bias, which is a well-established psychological phenomenon, basically that people will notice, remember, and accept data which supports what they believe or what they want to believe, and reject, forget, or dismiss data which disconfirms it. So this was just another paradigm where they actually had like dots on a screen, and then they had some dots were going, like most dots were going in one direction, a minority of dots were going the other direction, and then a minority of dots were randomly shifting. So there was one correct net direction that the dots were moving in, but they could play with the percentages to make it more or less difficult to detect which direction they were going in. But while keeping the success rate, so they could independently vary confidence and correctness, right? That was the key.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, when the more confident people were in their initial answer, even with keeping correctness stable, right? Do you get that?
Yeah.
The more confident they were,
the more sure of their answer they were, even if the answer was
still the same
wrong.
percentage, right or wrong.
Exactly.
The more sure they were in their answer, the less likely they were. So then they were presented with a confirming screen where it was obvious which direction it was moving in. If they were highly confident in a wrong answer, they would not self-correct when they were shown the correct.
So it's doubling down.
They doubled out, but if they were wrong, but they had low confidence, they would self-correct.
They'd be more
so they
likely.
tied
That makes
confidence to confirmation bias. So that's one part of it. The second part, though, is they did the same experiment with people in MAG and magnetoencephalography, and they showed that in the control setting, they basically confirmed that when people were making a decision, when they were processing the information about which direction the dots were going in, one part of the parietal lobe lit up, right, to show that they were processing that information. Then they showed that in the high confidence group that was wrong. They didn't even process the new information.
I'm not surprised.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not that they're ignoring it's that they don't even see it as
they didn't even perceive the new
yeah.
information because it was against their prior.
Yeah, well, and that's
Their
really
prior
why
answer.
when we talk about confirmation bias, and you mentioned, the long and short of it is that people tend to notice confirming it. It's we often say you need to count the misses, not just the hits.
Yeah.
And the problem is sometimes people just don't even count the misses because they don't see
They don't
them.
even see the misses.
Yeah.
It doesn't register. It's below the radar.
Yeah, that's
it needs to be audited.
problem.
Yeah.
The huge problem. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Hey, can we talk ray guns?
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
Really quick.
Okay. Can we, before we talk
Who's Ray Gun?
I don't want to bring the whole live feed down, but I do feel like there's a certain amount of a lot of people who are on the stream right now are from the US, but there's a ton of people that are outside of the US that that follow the Skeptic's Guide. And I love that. And I appreciate that. There's people from Lithuania. You're right. And, obviously we're getting a lot of concern from all over the world. People are looking at the US right now, and for a lot of reasons that we can point to, they're saying, are you guys okay? It is not looking good right there right now.
It's not looking good here.
I just feel like there's a little bit of a privilege that we have in being able to talk about things like particle physics and ray guns without even mentioning. I'm not saying we have to get into any politics, but mentioning that our thoughts are with George Floyd and with, well, not him, but with his family and with the protesters in Minneapolis and also in a lot of other big cities, and just the immense amount of like injustice and fear and anger that is existing right now. It's scary right now. And it's really scary that our own president is stoking the flames and dog whistling like crazy. So if I seem distracted, a lot of times it's because I'm looking at like the newest news and, you know, everybody's posting about it. And it's really, really important. And obviously it's not our area of expertise, and it's not what we do as science communicators on the show, but to not even mention it and pretend like it's not happening, or it could feel like we're doing that and we're not.
Yeah, we you're right, Karen. We try to do that. Like if something big happens in the world, we at least, guys, we're aware this thing happened, and of course, you know, we're sorry about it, and but we're going to go on with our show, you know, which is about science and critical thinking.
The show is what it is.
It is what it is. But you're right. So we do have to. We're aware that this shit's happening,
and it's such a big thing right now that I'm literally I'm in pain and I'm distracted by it like every minute of the day. Like it's today and yesterday and to some extent the day before, and of course since the time when this happened, and has been happening throughout all of American history, sadly, is brutal and horrible. And we're lucky enough that we don't live as Black people on the streets, and we're not reminded of it every second of every day. But it's to the extent right now where it's hard for me to focus on anything else. So I just wanted to kind of point
it's true
out.
I mean, it's just you know, again, not to get too far off on this, but I often think about how freaking outraged would I be if I were a member of a segment of society who was being treated that way, because it violates my sense of just fairness and justice and respect and dignity so much. It's enraging. As somebody who doesn't suffer from it at all, imagine if I were in that group. I mean, I can only imagine.
Yeah,
and then to see the president of your own country calling the protesters thugs when
and threatening
only
to
a few
shoot
months.
them.
When only a month ago you can compare that to tweets where he's talking about white people protesting wearing masks and calling them very good people. Like it's
to see just the pushback. The moment anyone talks about it online, all the hate that comes out.
It's immediately disgusting. Like George Floyd. Well, what was he doing that he had to get arrested? Let's pick apart his history. Let's try and understand how we can blame the victim. I mean, and this of course happens every time. So.
And the one good thing is that, you know, in the age of everyone having a cell phone, we're getting like some objective video and data, and you could, for all the world to see that this guy was unarmed, presented no threat, was totally submitting, and they just murdered him. And before that, we just would never know, right? We would never know what actually happened. You know what I mean?
And it's and when people say, I can't believe this is happening, that's a definite display of privilege. And when people say, why is it so bad now? How come it's getting worse? It's not. We just have more evidence now.
Yeah, we just have more evidence.
Have videotapes.
The other thing that people have pointed out, which also struck me, like again with the protesters, it's like, think about the double standard when we had heavily like military-style weapon, heavily armed protesters storming government buildings and disrupting legislatures, and the cops were like, "That's their right to protest. No problem here. They're just citizens exercising their right to protest and to speech." Imagine if those people were Black. You think that would have been the reaction of the cops? Imagine armed Black people storming a government building, like with AK-47s or whatever. No way. There's no way.
Now is the time for empathy. You know, I understand when people are offended by looting, and I understand when people are upset by chaos in the streets. This really, I think, in a lot of ways harkens back to the riots in LA and the Rodney King, everything that happened post Rodney King. And one of the arguments that I think is a really important argument that requires empathy to understand is that for a lot of people, who have been marginalized, living in a capitalist society where assets are more important than anything else. Looting is the only way to take a stand against murder, which often in these situations, human rights don't get as much media attention. Mm-hmm. The murder of a Black person doesn't seem as important to the justice, structure as the destruction of assets or the stealing of assets. And this is why looting has become a form of protest in marginalized communities. And I think that if we don't understand that, we don't take the time to try to utilize empathy, regardless of how you feel about people breaking the law to make a point.
That's a longer, more complicated discussion.
It's absolutely an important discussion to read up on and to not just make a very, first gut reaction.
Yeah,
and say, well, that's just as
there's
wrong.
a complicated, ethical, social, conversation.
And don't forget, I think we need to appreciate the period of time that we're in right now in terms of video actually being evidence, because without this video, this would have played out a lot more differently. And
absolutely,
and
well, without the video, as Steve says, we just wouldn't know about it.
We wouldn't know about it,
or we would know the cops' version of the story, because the other version,
But the video is what's catalyzing people, right? That this is what brought it to the next level. And this period of time where that is happening is not going to last very long, because with deepfake videos, we could have a video like this created that representing an event that didn't happen.
Well, we'll see. Well, Bob, she was live streaming it.
No, that's yes.
Yeah,
that's a little bit harder.
Right. And so, but that's exactly it, Steve. We need to now think about what are we going to do to make it so that in the future, deepfake videos don't cause disruption on a scale that makes this look like very trivial. Because can you imagine videos that can come out of a president, like say taking a bribe the day before, the day before? This is going to change our society. These deepfake videos are increasing in sophistication so much.
Or vice versa, Bob.
We need to deal with. Videos.
Yeah, like the actual
fake.
police.
It's a deep fake. It's a deep
or the
fake.
police changing of it. Some sort of power structure changing a video to make it look less. Whatever.
Do? Right. What can we do where videos become meaningless? Absolutely meaningless.
But like we're requiring it was. This is like town by town, state by state, requiring cops to have chest
grab the raw video,
and the body cams could be the technology can be anti-tamper. You can't fake it kind of
or like
stuff.
you said, Evan, you could get into the raw.
Right. We need to talk about this. How about this? If you're caught uploading videos, like if you create these deep fakes and you're spreading them around in the future when they
there's got to be crime for that.
There's got to be. I think they should make the punishment like really, really crazy strict, because this needs to be something that's zero tolerance. Because this is going to change stuff in ways that are it's going to be very disruptive, more than any other technology that's been
it's a form of fraud at best.
And guys, Shig Unmentionable on the stream, he said, as deep fakes become more sophisticated, won't the technology to detect them improve also? And I think that's a good point.
It's kind of a tangential conversation, but let me just say one more thing. And then we're going to go on to some Q&A.
Right, real quick though. When they figure out a way, look, here's a tell. This is how you can tell this is a deep fake. Then you account for that, and then that's no longer a tell anymore.
Yeah, it's an arms race.
It's an arms race.
But it's going to be a nasty arms race, and at some point, it's going to be so indistinguishable.
We'll need the AIs will tell us when it's fake, Bob.
So
hey man,
just keep in mind, just the one other thing I was trying to get in there is just keep in mind this is happening at a time where in the U.S. if you're black or brown, you're twice as likely to die from COVID-19 than if you're white.
Yeah.
So
again, there are deep social reasons behind this, and it's very complicated. I remember we mentioned this on the show, and one of the feedbacks that we got was somebody saying, like, how could you jump to that conclusion? What if there is an actual genetic reason for it? And the reason we can jump to that conclusion and know that there's not a genetic reason for it is that there's no plausible explanation. It sometimes happens, like for example with sickle cell anemia, and that's because of an actual. It's genetic, yes, but it's really because of where these individuals live.
But that's a genetic disease.
It's a genetic disease, of course, and it also it comes from the exposures and the things that were happening in these regions that then spread around the world, right? That's what happens with genes. But there's. First of all, if you know anything about infectious disease or biology, you know straight up that race it's not a thing. Like, we know that this is a construct. There's nothing about a person's internal plumbing because of their race that makes them any different than other people. These are regional issues with things like sickle cell. And then second, because there's enough evidence out there and there's enough research to show that the social systems that have been in place for centuries at this point in our country do disproportionately affect marginalized individuals, especially people of color. Every disease, well, not every single one, but a lot of diseases hit these people harder. We know this. We know this. I mean, it's like, why would I assume that this is a rare and random problem when, you know, the face validity is already there? And then as you dig into it, you're reinforced with the actual evidence. So we have to, you know, work with these schemas. I think that's important. Anyway. Okay.
So we actually have eaten up most of our time, but let's do a few questions before we close down.
Go ahead, Ian.
Ian, you got any questions lined up?
This one might be an old one, but it says, looking for Steve's opinion on opening businesses on May 1st.
I mean, yeah, that's a complicated question, but the thing is,
because it's May 1st.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, May 1st, yeah. But I just thought I was just taking it as opening up whenever, you know, because different states are opening up at different times. It's, you know, there's got to be a calculus, like what's the criteria that we're using to decide when to open up. Then you have to open up slowly and follow your feedback. So are the numbers going up, hospitalizations, you know, confirmed cases, deaths? And we need to not only continue our social distancing and hygiene, but we need testing and contact tracing. And it does have to be a local decision because, you know, it's different. Unfortunately, right now, there's a lot of evidence that while cities were hit first, it's starting to spread now in rural America. You know, that may be the second wave, you know, maybe more in the rural areas. So anyway, it's hard to see what's happening from the middle of the storm, you know.
So Steve, overall though, we're trending down, just not very quickly, right? But then you're seeing pockets in certain regions.
Yeah, but a lot of that, remember, is due to New York State.
Yeah,
because that peaked early, and it's also the most cases. And once you get, if you factor that out, it's actually not that much of a trend down.
And we also know that as long as we don't have a vaccine, the two things that are the most important to remember are we're nowhere near herd immunity.
Yeah.
We don't have a vaccine.
Right.
And given those two things, all we can do is keep flattening the curve. Otherwise, we're just going to get more. We're going to get more cases until enough people are immune. If they even become immune for a short term.
We don't know.
Which we don't know, but we're going to get more cases until enough people are immune that it's not spreading so fast.
That's it's quite possible that this virus is going to become endemic, and like we're going to have to transition to a new normal indefinitely, you know. Even after the vaccine's not going to necessarily, it'll help.
Yeah, we don't know.
But it's we have a flu vaccine, you know.
Somebody goes, I hate that term, the new normal. Let's just be like it was when it was normal.
What?
I'm like,
does that even mean?
That doesn't even mean.
That's the whole point is
think about what you're saying. Like
it's non sequitur.
Just don't use the word normal unless you know how to use it.
It's like getting stranded on an island and going, I hate this. Let's just think about when we weren't on the outside. Listen, idiot, the world has changed. World has changed.
The word normal should be used sparingly.
All right, Ian, give us a real question.
While we're waiting for the next question, this is one of my favorite guns. This is from Mars Attacks. This is what somebody said. Is that Mars Attacks? So it's
you survived it, Bob.
Gun.
Congratulations.
I don't know why they actually put a sticker, Mars Attacks, with an image. It's so goofy, but I love this gun. It's very retro, but my favorite thing about this gun, there is actually a brain inside this gun that's controlling the gun. And in my mind, this brain
really controlling the gun.
This poor brain is screaming. This brain is screaming in terror, and its only outlet is to like disintegrate people, and it's being tortured. So this poor, and it's clearly a brain. I mean,
why can't you just imagine that the brain is happy?
Brains scream. I didn't know that.
Jay, look at the Mars Attacks aliens. Do you think they would genetically engineer a brain that has an orgasm every time it fires, or it screams in horror?
You're right.
It's clearly screaming. So that's one. This one is one of my favorites for sure.
Mars Attacks. Oh man, that movie.
All right, let's get another question.
This question is for Brian and then Bob. If you had to place a bet on what dark matter turns out to be, what's your money on? Is there a significant chance it could be something other than a new exotic particle?
It's probably a wimp, but not a macho, right? We can
said Brian and then Bob.
Bob, shut
up. You let the guest talk, Bob. Christ.
Yeah, I mean, evidence overwhelmingly favors particles rather than some kind of, you know, modification of Newton's laws or something like that, or some big thing. What that particle is, I mean, my money's probably against some super partner right now because there's so little evidence of supersymmetry.
Yeah.
And beyond that, probably an Axion is maybe a promising
Axions.
candidate.
Cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Also, because they seem like such a natural thing in so many models that you don't need radical, new symmetries and stuff like that. But I don't, it still could be. There's so many possibilities. Most notably, a bunch of stuff we just haven't thought of. So, I don't, anything we know right now doesn't have, it doesn't lack problems.
Mm.
You okay with that, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I can't disagree with any of that. I mean, initially it was either a macho or a wimp, which I thought were wonderful acronyms. The macho was a massive compact halo object, like say, huge, like lots of black holes or brown dwarfs, and so they pretty much ruled that out. So it's going to be a WIMP, a weakly interacting massive particle, probably. But it's amazing. We still have no real good idea what this could be, and it's one of the great mysteries in physics. And hopefully, I'll see a solution someday. Be nice.
Yeah, I think of all the weird unknowns in physics, the one that I am most confident of solving within our lifetimes is dark matter. Like, there's just so many experiments going on right now, including some tiny, they're large experiments and some tiny experiments that you can do kind of in a small lab. There's all sorts of interesting stuff, and people are finding out more and more every
Where's
day.
your nickel, Brian? What's your nickel on for what? Where we're
I
going to
don't
find
even
it?
know. Yeah, when did you say?
No, where? I mean,
like the
what?
underground
Yeah, what will be
detectors,
the?
or,
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to find it?
I just don't know. I don't have any strong.
There's no horse in the lead of that race that you're aware of.
Not for me. I'm not a dark matter expert, so I'm sure if you talk to someone who was, they
Talk
would
to Katie Mack.
Yeah, Katie knows a lot
Yeah,
about
that's
this
her.
stuff.
That's her field.
Yeah.
Can we talk real quick about our reading list, because we mentioned we might do that? And
sure.
Brian got up and got his book. So I wanted to show off and share with everybody what I've been reading since the lockdown started. And I'll do them in the order that I read them. So I started with The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch, which is, he was a professor who wrote about, coming to his death, and shared some of the stories that he learned through his life with his students in a last lecture, and then wrote it down. Then I read The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. So this is all about the prison system in the US, and basically the way that we've used mass incarceration in prisons to effectively minimize the rights of African Americans, even in modern society. So The New Jim Crow. Then I read Tuesdays with Morrie, which is a very famous all
ALS,
about
right?
a professor again who died of ALS, and his student came and spent every Tuesday with him for a few months before he died, and he shared a lot of life lessons. And I read a lot of books about death. It's my area of academic interest, but it's also just, that's why it's my area of academic interest, because it's interesting. Then we were talking about this on, we may have mentioned this, I'm not sure. This is Angela Saini's older book, Inferior: How Science Got Women Wrong and the New Research That's Rewriting the Story. So this is all about bias within science over the years, especially with regards to women's health, women's equality, things like that. So it's a really important read, I think. And then the book I'm on right now, I mentioned on the show last week, I don't know if it made it in, is by Sherwin Newland. It's called How We Die. He died in 2014. He wrote this actually, I think, in the 90s. It's a really old book, but there's an update. Steve, he was a surgeon at Yale.
I'm familiar with the book. Yeah,
and it won a National Book Award. It was up for a Pulitzer, so it was on the short list for the Pulitzer. And this, he breaks down chapter by chapter the most frequent causes of death in the US, like what's actually happening. He argues that death of old age is a real thing, even though we need to, from a pathologist perspective, attach the specific cause, that cause or any number is going to happen anyway, because we die slowly. things wear out. It's going to happen in one of several ways.
Organs just fail at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So whether it's from a hardening of the arteries or from a specific stroke or whatever, all these things are happening in concert.
I don't know if I agree with it.
You need to read this book, Bob. As I was,
but I don't think it's so much. I don't think it's so much as wearing out as being genetically programmed to die.
He talks about that, all of the different theories of what's actually happening for cellular death, for organ death. It's both Bob and Jay, as I was reading, especially the chapters on old age and on what happens in senescence. And he argues fervently that the types of things that we think are going to extend life for a really long time simply aren't enough and simply won't work, because there is a not just individual reason that we live a certain amount of time, but there's also a what do you call it? Like, oh, sorry, I bumped my computer. A generational reason, like old die so that young can come up. Like this is an important part of the life cycle.
It's ridiculous. When the technology arrives where they will have therapies that could address the specific things that cause us to die, there's no way they're gonna say, nah, we got to let the young people live. You know, we're not.
That's not what I'm saying, Bob. What I'm saying is that what you're talking about doing as of right now is nearly impossible. It's like saying once we can bottle consciousness, it requires
complicated
an understanding that we simply don't have yet. But I do think it's important to read these types of books from very, very, very knowledgeable authors. So I highly recommend this as well. I'm about halfway done with it. All right. What do we got from
Brian?
From Brian.
All right. So similar to Kara, I've been on a real reading kick recently. I just have a small stack here of stuff I've done. This is one of the wildest books I've read in a long time. It's called The Revisionaries by A.R. Moxon. It's a novel. And it's one of these things where it's half a cat for
Dirk Gently, it looks like.
So there's a bit of that. It's kind of a comic novel. The hook, which is something that happens in the first, 20 pages, so I won't give anything away, is a character, the Hulk, sees a guy who is flickering in and out of visibility. And then it just kind of goes off on a ride from there. It's got many layers. It's kind of, I still don't fully understand it because it's the kind of thing you clearly need to read again. I don't want to give anything away about it, except to say that at some point you understand why there's a cat there and you're like, what? It's wild.
You recommend it?
I highly recommend this book also because I don't know anyone else that's read it and I want to talk to someone about it to be like, okay, what do you think was happening here?
Gotcha.
So it's really interesting. I think it's this guy's debut novel and I absolutely loved it.
I'm writing that down. That sounds cool.
It's awesome and it's a fast read too. Next, it's a collection of essays by Heather Havrilesky, who is a really wonderful author. She used to be a TV critic for Salon, and she has this.
I know, Steve.
What?
I wrote my essay.
We cannot hear the word. We can't hear the word essay without. That's from South Park. When Cartman was pretending to be a gangbanger.
Yeah, I remember that.
Another one I regale my daughters with, by the way. But go ahead.
Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah.
She's a really wonderful, and it's kind of depressing. The book is called "What If This Were Enough," and it's basically just like one of these collections of essays about living in the modern world. And she's just so smart. Really well versed, especially in pop culture, and just a wonderful writer. So
I like it.
This is the one I'm in the middle of right now. It's going to have a very controversial title, so get ready. It is the 6th volume in a 6-volume semi-autobiographical series by this Norwegian guy. It's called My Struggle by Karlova Knausgaard. Yes, intentionally so. He's very aware of that, and in fact talks about why he named it that for 400 pages. It is not any kind of weird alt-right thing. It is it is a...
That is the 6th of a series of 6. You've read the other 5 already?
Yes, and this one
Is this guy that interesting?
You know what? He's not, and that's what makes it amazing. Every sentence of this book is like, and then I walked over to the coffee maker. I pulled out a filter. When I was pulling out the filter, here's what I thought. And it describes what he's doing and feeling to such a minute extent that it becomes fascinating.
Interesting.
It is like it's unput down.
It's almost like a computerized interpretation of what's going on in his head, laid out in paper in word form.
And it's about his life, including stuff from when he was like a very little kid. So there's no way he could actually remember it. So that's why it's a novel. He calls it an autobiographical novel.
So it's like a book version of Periscope.
Kind of. It's some crazy thing. It was a huge sensation in Norway. There's some statistic like 1 out of every 4 people in the country of Norway has read these books.
Yeah.
And people were trying to track down everybody.
I hope it's not because they thought it was something else.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
it's definitely
they figured
not,
that out after 700 pages.
It's like, wait a moment.
It's like, get past the title. The title is no indication
Yeah, it
on
doesn't
this
bother
guy's
me at all.
beliefs, but it's great.
Okay.
2 more quick ones. Great graphic novels. It's the first trade in Crowded, near future dystopia in which this woman has a crowdsourced hit taken out on her and has to try to figure out why.
Oh, cool.
So she enlists this woman as a bodyguard, also through an app. It's basically gig culture run amok, and it's very funny and well drawn.
Cool.
And then finally, and this is something of a plug, I have a graphic novel about my life.
Oh, no way.
I want that. I want
Brian,
that.
you gotta send me a copy. What are you
Wait,
doing?
Brian,
Well,
is this actually your life for real?
Or is it your life as
Or is it Ninja Brian's
character's
life? Is it
No,
Ninja
it's-
Brian's life?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Send me a picture of the most risque photo in there.
Me.
Is Audrey in there?
I'm buying that right now.
No, because here's the way this works. So if you read it one way, it's my life.
Uh-huh.
Flip it
No
over.
way.
Oh, I love that.
Danny.
This way, it's my partner Dan's life, and
I love that.
What's it called?
it's called Ninja Sex Party, the graphic novel. And in the middle, we meet.
How graphic.
Oh, fun. Oh, so
the reason I bring it
cool.
up,
Like from
it
an
just
alternate
came out
universe.
this week.
That sounds like fun.
Did a
That's
listener or a fan
amazing.
come up with that? That's amazing.
Yeah, when did you guys decide to make this?
Oh no.
Ooh,
Give me
Brian
this,
froze.
Brian froze.
Brian disconnected.
It's not a
he's-
bad.
Wait, no, he's
Kinda
thinking.
hear him.
He's just thinking,
You
guys.
guys hear me?
We
can hear you.
We can
but
hear
you're-
you. We can't.
Screenshot
You're going like
that.
this.
Can you?
The censors
Let's
have
all
kicked
do
in.
Brian. Everybody do Brian's face.
Okay, cool. All right.
All right, Brian, I just pre-ordered it.
There you are.
The
There you
company. I
I just
You're back.
pre-ordered it.
You know
I'm
Rachel's all over that, Brian. She's gonna enjoy that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so it was supposed to come out a couple of weeks ago, but due to the virus, it got delayed shipping a little bit. But it just came out, so it's wild.
Awesome, man.
This is a milestone
That
in my
just went
life.
onto the list.
I just got a friend of mine finally got into a graphic novel like that. I love that idea that I'm going to read a graphic novel about your life. I'm totally
It's
all
weird.
over that.
It's weird having it. It's weird. Like we did these hours of interviews and wrote it together with the guys who designed it. This company, Fantunes, and now it's out.
That's awesome. Man.
Awesome.
So cool.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, so let me close this mofo down. You guys
Well,
ready?
wait, hold on. We have another book.
Oh, okay.
What new book?
What book?
SGU book in a certain language that was released.
Oh, really?
Oh
Yeah, what's our
Yeah.
latest
Right,
language, Steve?
Is it China? No, that's
The
Spanish,
Spanish one.
right?
We talked about
No,
the Spanish
I think
one already.
I think there's China or Japan now. I saw it on Amazon.
Must be China.
And I was like, WTF? I don't have any of these copies.
Yeah,
I
don't
didn't
have
get
any.
any. I only
I
have
don't
this
have
one.
None of
any
us
either.
Yeah.
Even though I can't read any.
I was
languages.
interviewed yesterday on Telemundo about
That's
this.
amazing.
Did you have
Yeah.
a translator?
If
I'm
oh
assuming,
god, I had a joke and I'm just not going to throw it away.
No.
'cause
But Jay, let's
Wise
mention we have
man,
Brian here.
wise.
Jay, Brian. So we just got confirmed for the Friday night of Nexus. We're doing a game show on Friday night.
Ooh.
There's going to
Yeah.
be 3 contestants.
Yes.
Right, we're going to be the quiz givers, and the contestants are going to be Leanne Lord, who's been for the last couple of years
Yep, she's
a
amazing.
very funny
Yeah.
lady,
She's
a
great.
comedian,
Yeah.
MC of Nexus previously. And then we also got Bill Nye the Science Guy. He's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
know
presenting.
him.
yeah.
And
So who's
Brian,
your money on?
who did you get, Brian?
Leanne.
And Andrea Jones Roy,
Yeah,
who was a political scientist that spoke at Nexus last year.
her
that
talk last
my
year was
favorite talk.
awesome.
My
Yeah.
favorite talk.
She was my
Fantastic
favorite. Yeah.
speaker.
Oh god, she
Really
was funny as
fun,
shit.
smart, funny
Hilarious.
person.
It's-
Dynamite.
So that's going to be awesome.
So
And
that's Friday night to be specific.
That's
So
Friday
the
night, and
Game
then-
show Friday night.
Saturday, where we almost have the whole speaker lineup set. We're also going to have a lot of, skeptics, well-known skeptics going to be like asking questions of the speakers and hanging out with us digitally, or maybe a limited number in studio, depends on what the virus is doing. So yeah, it's going to be. I'm now starting to get excited because we're past that point where I'm not like worried about booking speakers. Like we have enough people, and now we're just putting the icing on the cake. Now, it's going to be great.
I'm still waiting to get excited.
Nexus.org, necss.org to buy tickets. And keep in mind, if you do buy a ticket for Nexus 2020, the digital Nexus, you will get that same exact discount on your ticket for the 2021, which will be in Atlantic City. And oh boy, that's going to be awesome.
Hey,
so guys,
a lot of people are asking for Brian's book titles again. How can we get this out to them?
Well, I'll get it. I'll put it in the description.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us this week, guys. Listen, some people were writing in the comments. I noticed that they were expecting more of a regular SGU show. We do this to talk about topics that we don't normally cover on the show. We're actually doing this to give people entertainment.
It's also a lot of work prepping an SGU show every week. And so
hi, Killer.
This is fun.
Re-prep this is a little more off the cuff.
Yeah, we like to veer off a little bit.
Shooting the breeze, as it were.
These are not intended to be like a regular show. I'd like to thank our SGU patrons, guys. It's because of them that we can continue to put out a show every week. And if you'd like to support the SGU, you could just go to patreon.com/Skeptics Guide. To our patrons, thank you so much. I mentioned this last week. I'm just going to say it straight up right now. Next week, we will be doing version 1 of the online streaming game that everybody can play along with the SGU.
Fun.
Yeah,
it's going to be ready to go by next Friday, Jay.
Can I play?
Yes,
that's a guarantee. I've got the Jay guarantee.
It's like
we'll talk to Ian afterwards. Yeah, we're pretty sure.
60% of the time.
I tested it and went through the admin section yesterday. We're load testing it on Tuesday. It should be ready to go for Friday.
It's
and if
guaranteed.
It fails, so what?
I'm 80% confident that it's 70% going to happen. 60% of the time.
80% times 70%.
I would like to thank Brian. Brian, thank you so much.
Brian.
Yeah, good seeing you, Brian.
So good seeing you.
And can we all give a little happy birthday to Killer, who's 10 years old?
Oh,
10
Killer.
years old.
Happy birthday, Killer.
Brian, in case everyone listening doesn't know, Brian is one half of Ninja Sex Party.
Yes.
And he's also happens to be a physicist, and he's awesome. And Brian is a great friend and has done an amazing amount of help to the SGU as a friend to the SGU. He's really helped us with the extravaganza. So
Absolutely.
Brian, thank you so much. And Ian.
Thank you, Ian. The guy behind the camera.
Sexy bastard. The man behind the scenes.
Refuses to show his face.
Yeah, we could not. We
love you, Ian.
I have no face. Okay, good night.
That's as close as you'll ever get to seeing me.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Thanks all.
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
Ian crashed us out. SGU Productions, dedicated to promoting science and critical thinking. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to info@theskepticsguide.org. And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.